The new Resurgence map could be here. And we know for the last 4 years, Call of Duty has always released some type of Resurgence map almost every single year. There's been about 5 main maps and a couple bonus ones that they released as well. So the question arises, when Call of Duty makes the next Resurgence map, because they probably already cooking on it now, what exactly will that be? Because I promise you, we are probably going to get a Resurgence map very, very soon. So let's talk about it. But before we do, let's take a trip down memory lane and go over all the Resurgence maps so far and figure out what we've learned from each of those and what should be implemented into the next one. So first and foremost, the golden child, Rebirth Island. This map debuted in December of 2020 and was modeled after Alcatraz, a famous prison for those of y'all that don't know. It was the first ever Resurgence map with bright colors, playground feel, and an easy to understand map layout. You know, when it comes to anything in life, striking gold on the first try is incredibly rare. And some way, somehow, Call of Duty actually did that. Rebirth came out and quite literally what felt like instantly it became a success. Rebirth Island bridged the gap between multiplayer and BR. A lot of people, if you're probably watching this, came from the multiplayer space. Then they switched to BR because it made you feel like your life actually mattered. But with that came some problems. And those problems were that sometimes you just weren't getting into as many gunfights as you were used to in multiplayer. So Call of Duty decided to make something of this, and thus Resurgence was born. And let me tell you, this mode slapped. I don't think Call of Duty has ever put out any public numbers when it comes to Resurgence versus BR, but I could bet my life that Resurgence numbers are practically double of BR. Maybe not now with Verdansk, but I still think they are still incredibly healthy. It filled a gap in this environment where people didn't want to really play multiplayer where your life didn't matter, but at the same time, people didn't want to wait 10 minutes just to get into one single gunfight like in BR. So with Resurgence, you kind of got the best of both worlds. You got that BR experience, but you were always constantly shooting your gun. As you guys know, Rebirth Island got a couple different changes over the years and a couple different reskins. Then following Rebirth Island's success, Call of Duty probably thought, okay, we have something here, let's invest into this. And thus, Fortune's Keep was born. Fortune's Keep launched during 2022 while Caldera was out, and was later brought back during 2024. I want you to really think about this. How do you follow up Rebirth Island? There's bound to be some type of failure. And don't get me wrong, I don't think Fortune's Keep was a failure, but in comparison to Rebirth Island, I assume that the numbers probably weren't that great, because even to this day, I don't really see a lot of people talking about Fortune's Keep. This map brought a completely new vibe into the game, especially when, in my opinion, it needed it most. Because at the end of Verdansk, people were so tired of hackers that they switched over to Resurgence, and then with the introduction of Caldera, arguably the worst BR map ever introduced, came Fortune's Keep. And I personally think this is one of the most underrated maps. I personally loved it. It had a good mixture of buildings, but also open area to fight in, and it had really distinct POIs where I felt actually made a difference. Like I said earlier, I really do wish this map got a little bit more love, but they did bring it back for Resurgence ranked play. Trigger warning, this is gonna piss some people off. It is way better than Rebirth ranked. It is way better than any other ranked in my opinion. Yes, that includes Al Mazrah, Urzikstan, Verdansk, and Rebirth Island. I think the most fun I've ever had on ranked was Fortune's Keep. And I'm not too sure if that was because there wasn't that many hackers or if it was just because the map was actually good. But for competitive, it played out extremely well. But I don't think it really had that same effect when it came to pubs. I think a lot of people were frustrated with the amount of third parties that you can have in that map, so I don't think it had the amount of success that it deserved. But it'll still forever hold a place in my heart. Following Fortune's Keep, y'all already know what came next. Warzone 2. The worst era of Warzone we've ever had. Yes, even worse than what we have now. Warzone 2 was probably the biggest step backwards for the franchise and introduced a bunch of slow mechanics and a bunch of clunkiness to a game that never really felt clunky. And with Warzone 2 came a new Resurgence map. That was Ashika Island. This was released in February of 2023 during Season 2 of Warzone 2. Ashika Island has always been the most controversial. You either loved Ashika Island or you hated it. I personally hated it. I think the biggest gripe with this map was its color palette. Ashika Island was, in blunt terms, depressing. It was very dark, very cloudy, very rainy. There was absolutely zero color on the map and thus zero life on the map. I do believe that Ashika Island is probably the most hated map out of everything on this list. But whether you can contribute that to Warzone 2's failure or whether you can contribute that to the actual map itself, one thing's for sure, most people hated Ashika Island. But I hope Ashika Island was a lesson for Call of Duty, because I'm sure they received an insane amount of feedback about the color palette, hoping that the next map they introduced would bring back some type of vibrant colors. And thus, Vondo was created. In June of 2023, during Season 4 of Warzone 2, Vondo released. And let me tell you, this map slapped. I'm gonna go ahead and say it, this is personally my favorite Resurgence map to date. This map had, instead of 45, I believe it had 72 players. So it was a lot bigger sandbox of Resurgence as opposed to the smaller Rebirth Island. Because of its higher player count, it was also the biggest Resurgence map ever. And because of that, it allowed for some of the highest kill Resurgence games we've ever seen. And not only did Call of Duty stop there, they also introduced nukes into Resurgence, which I do think was pretty successful. Vondo, in my opinion, changed the game completely. Call of Duty took a chance and tried to increase the player count to see if that equaled to more success. Again, we don't know actual numbers of what the player counts actually look like, but me personally, I love Vondo the best. And I'm really sad that it's been taken out and it hasn't returned. I think Vondo was just a testing grounds. They added a bunch of different things, again, like increased player counts. They also included superhero abilities. And as I said before, nukes as well. For me, when it came to Warzone 2, I hated the game altogether. But I did find a little bit of dope playing Vondo. Call of Duty, if you are listening, I really hope that one day you bring this back. Now let's fast forward to November of 2024, and this is Area 99. This was a Black Ops 6 themed Resurgence map. Call of Duty said what they tried to do with this map was make the nuke town of Resurgence, and thus you were in some sort of nuclear power plant. But sadly, I do think this map suffered the same fate as Ashika Island. The color palette was just way too bland. Now I get it, it's an abandoned Nuketown area, so everything's gonna be dusty and everything's gonna be very old, but I still think when it comes to Call of Duty, people like the vibrant colors. Let's look at Black Ops 3. That game had some of the most beautiful maps I've ever seen. I know some people might not like it, but that game had so many dope and memorable maps. Think about Fringe, Infection, Redwood, and probably one of my favorites, Knockout. If you take a look at the map Knockout, that map is literally what Ashika Island should have been. Like I said before, Area 99 suffered the same fate as Ashika Island. People didn't really vibe with it. A lot of it probably had to do with the reactor tower right in the middle, where if you were camping there, you could shoot from any area of the map, which made for a lot of third parties that a lot of the casual audience didn't really like. And thus, Area 99 had the shortest lifespan ever for a Resurgence map. Now there's one more map that I won't really get into, but that is Al Mazrah Fortress, that for some reason in Warzone 2, they decided to add it for like a day or two and then take it out. Don't really know what was going on there. They tried to hype it up as some new Resurgence map, but it was quite literally a section of Warzone 2's map that they cut and put it into a Resurgence mode. So now let's talk about what actually worked. Out of all these 5 maps, there's only one that has continued to remain practically 5 years later, and that is Rebirth Island. Hear me out. I believe that Rebirth Island is the Nuketown of Warzone. The same way that Call of Duty always brings back Nuketown. Why? Because it's just a fan favorite. Nuketown has passed the test of time and always returns. People have been playing that map for 5 years and the player count is still incredibly healthy. So what does that tell you? People don't really care that they want a brand new map. They want something that's comfortable, something that they know. And thus, that is Rebirth Island. I think the reason why Rebirth Island is successful is because I think it actually is a very well polished map. Every POI on that map doesn't really interfere with other POIs. That means that the amount of third parties are pretty limited. If you're fighting in control and if you're staying in that building, you probably will not get shot from anywhere else. If you're on the roof, you could probably get shot at from prison, but for the most part, you're good. Same thing if you're in prison, if you're fighting prison, nobody can third party you. And same thing for practically every other POI on the map. It allows for you to get into a gunfight, get your kills, and then move on. I think that's why Area 99 didn't succeed. It's because every single fight, you were constantly getting shot at from somebody else in some other random direction. As opposed to Rebirth Island, you're only focusing on the guys in front of you, which for the majority of people who get on after a long day, they just want to shoot their gun. They don't want to really think too much, which I completely understand. Do you think that Call of Duty should continue to do what they've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years? And that is invest time and resources into making new Resurgence map every single year? Or, hear me out, should they use those resources, use that budget to then reskin Rebirth Island and make Rebirth Island fresh and new like they do every single year for Nuketown? I'm not talking about changing everything crazy and changing the whole layout. I'm talking about reskinning. I'm talking about updating POIs here and there. Nothing too crazy. People don't really like change, but enough to where it makes a difference and makes people want to hop back on the game. What if during Christmas we got a true, actual holiday themed Rebirth Island where the whole map was covered in Christmas lights and it just gave you that nice feel? Or we know Black Ops 7 is coming out. Why not give us a futuristic looking Rebirth Island? You see, we know that Rebirth Island works. It's still here after 5 years. Call of Duty is trying to recreate their one-hit wonder, and from what it seems like, it's not working. Now, I'm not saying completely stop innovation. I'm just saying, why not put a little bit more resources into what you know works? I can just imagine all the possibilities of changing Rebirth Island, adding new POIs, and making it fun and new for players to come back to every single year. Now, the same thing can be said about Verdansk. Verdansk came out and again was a one-hit wonder. They struck gold on the first try. A lot of people loved it, but after a while, they got bored because there was no new changes. They got rid of it. They came out with Caldera, worst map ever created, and they tried map after map after map, but people still complained and they wanted Verdansk back. Now we got what we wanted. We got Verdansk back. They can do the exact same thing to Verdansk as well. Why not update Verdansk, do reskins, do weather changes, have really cool dynamic elements, add new different flavors and touches to the map. Both Rebirth Island and Verdansk have gone through the test of time and have prevailed. I know there's probably a couple of you guys thinking that could never work. So hear me out. Counter-Strike. That game has been out for 25 years now, and they've been using the same maps for the last 20 years, and their player count is still insane. Fortnite, they brought back their OG map, and they hit new records for player counts. Why not grab what we have now, grab what people love, and just tweak and build off of that? Grab fan favorite maps, for example, Fringe. That's set to be returning in Season 4.5. Why not add Fringe into Warzone? We know that was a possible leak that was supposed to come, but it never really happened. I think Call of Duty needs to learn that Rebirth Island is their gold mine, in the same way that Verdansk is their gold mine for BR players. Again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying stop all innovation, because that's also lazy. But I really do hope that one day we can get rotating maps for both Resurgence and BR, to where we'll always have Rebirth Island and we'll always have Verdansk, but every year they come out with a different map for both modes. They know they have their safety net of Rebirth Island and Verdansk, but while also being able to try different things and try new maps. So I'll leave you guys with this. Call of Duty is more than likely working on a new Resurgence map as of right now, probably scheduled to come out with the new Black Ops 7. So let me know down in the comments below, what do you guys want to see in a Resurgence map? Did you agree with what I said today, or did you not? Which is totally fine. Do you guys think that Call of Duty should continue to innovate, continue to try different things, or should they build off what they already know works?